Okay. Oh yeah, it's your big boy Bacho back at you with more frequent reviews of relevant popular videos, films, sorry. Fucking hell, I'm not very good at intros, I'm not very good at reviews, I'm not very good at anything, but I'm here anyway. I'm going to keep trying. And because I am quite lazy, it's mostly going to be ones that are available on Netflix, like new releases that just come out on Netflix, so I don't have to trek to the cinema or anything. I don't know, cinema's a bit of a hassle, because you have to schedule your whole day around it. I should be going to see Spider-Man though, so that's one thing. There are other films like Lamb and Titania or whatever, Titane, that are coming out at a certain point in December, but they won't be showing anywhere else other than the West End in London. I'm not going to go there for 300 quid a ticket or some shit. But yeah, 5 places in Britain are showing certain films I actually really want to see, or the Cannes official selection films. They've done well at Cannes. I'll probably end up seeing those ones in a year from now. I'll have to pay 10 quid for them on Amazon. I haven't even seen another round yet. I've just found that on Amazon for 8 quid to rent, or hopefully to buy actually. Anyway, today I'm reviewing the new Western starring Benedict Cumberbatch and Jesse Plemmons, The Power of the Dog.
You got a sword, God?
No.
You act like it pains you to hitch 2 words together.
Interesting title. Right off the bat, I'd recommend you go and watch it right now. Get off this stupid video. It's another one of these very self-reflective postmodern Western films that revisits this time period in an almost art house fashion and really humanises all of the characters. This film has a very minimalist story. On paper, not much happens at all. It's a Western that's set in the 1920s, so it's sort of about the dying West, but really the West is already dead. And Benedict Cumberbatch plays the cowboy character, and it's him and a few other ranchers who are the last remaining stragglers of that old era, the old way of life. From the way I'm describing it, you could probably pick up similarities with Red Dead Redemption, the Red Dead Redemption games, and another film like The Sisters Brothers, where it's the modernization of the American West, and these cowboys have no purpose anymore, and it's a really sad and interesting story. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is another great example. Some of the greatest Western media of all time comes from that specific theme of the dying West. And The Power of the Dog stands out in that small niche category of Westerns with its unique take on this idea. Because it's not really about this overt conflict between civilization and the Old West. It's just a slow, matter-of-fact movement of this tiny bit of land where there's a ranch and a restaurant, really. And that's slowly becoming something that resembles a modern home, a modern homestead. There are arguably 2 main characters of this film, Benedict Cumberbatch being one and Kirsten Dunst being the other. Jesse Plemmons is ready to embrace the new way of life, the modernization. And Benedict Cumberbatch is quite clearly fine with hanging on with the old ranching ways. Getting your hands dirty, scruffy work, always unwashed and tough and masculine. Other films like this may have stories where this tiny little place, this little ranch, slowly becomes this bustling town, a modern town. In this film, a key representation of modernity, embracing modernity, is Jesse Plemmons' character trying to create a family environment with Kirsten Dunst and her son. And Benedict Cumberbatch doesn't like that. Really, it follows this unspoken rivalry between Benedict Cumberbatch and Kirsten Dunst. And the way that the film evokes that conflict is done purely visually and cinematographically. There's no overt dialogue oh, you've done this, or you're changing this, or how dare you. It's all visual, it's all using cinema. It's just full of really good visual storytelling, because again, it's a fairly bare bones plot. Characters' emotions are conveyed visually and through their actions, subtly, and they're so humanistic and 3-dimensional.
What you said about her boy tonight, Phil, made her cry.
Benedict Cumberbatch gives a great performance in this film. This is my favourite performance of his so far, easily.
Oh, she's on the sauce.
On the sauce?
Drinking, Pete. Boozing it up.
I do see him as the Oscar bait, very popular guy, but I think if he got nominated for this, that would be deserved, even though the Oscars don't mean anything. Jesse Plemmons is always a delight to see on screen. He's just got a brilliant filmography. Breaking Bad alone, he's in The Master as well. I'm Thinking of Ending Things. He just has really good judgment with what projects to take. He's cooking himself up a really juicy filmography. Without spoiling it, people don't really know what to think of the last shot of the film, and I don't really either, because nothing is overtly said or stated. People don't just say what they're thinking, and there's a lot of meaning to derive from it, but it's not all clear on first viewing. But you still get such a good grasp of the characters' emotions just through the performances and the visual aspect to it. Which is kind of what storytelling's all about, what filmmaking is all for. It just says how little dialogue you really need to convey stuff like this. I love westerns, but I don't have like a bias towards them. Like if this was just a generic modern western, I wouldn't like it. The set design for the most part's really good. The restaurant at the start, that set feels a little bit empty, but the whole location, the whole ranch is essentially just one building. It's a very weird place. It's like the last stronghold of the Old West in America. And then you have these very symbolic shots of these automobiles coming on the road, very modern looking roads as well. You don't quite always realise how recent this all is because of the western aesthetic, but every now and then it reminds you. You're like, fucking hell. There's this really striking imagery when Jesse Plemmons and Benedict Cumberbatch are having this sort of argument, and Benedict Cumberbatch is just in full cowboy rancher get-up, just dirty, unwashed, and Jesse Plemmons is stood opposite him wearing a tuxedo, like a really modern tuxedo. That was so weird because you don't realise how modern it is again. It's such an interesting contrast, and expressed visually again. And that whole sequence when Jesse Plemmons and Kirsten Dunst are whining and dining that governor, and you look inside this home and it's all upper class modern living relative to the time period. And then Benedict Cumberbatch walks in and he stands out like a sore thumb.
I didn't get washed up, so I didn't come.
You didn't wash.
Oh, he's a ranch man, isn't that right? That's honest dirt.
There's some slight psychological undertones to the film, because there are parts of the score that have unnerving beats. Like something's amiss, something's happening, and you're not quite sure what. There are a few instances at the start where the score felt a little bit too derivative of A24 horror movies, like that disjointed violin sound you hear a lot. But from then on the score did improve, because what they did was they mixed like western intonations with those horror intonations, if that's the word. Because there was some partial forebodingness and grief in this story of appropriating this ranch for the modern era. Another thing you need to get right when you're making a western is the locations and the setting, because that is its own character in these films. And for the most part the locations are beautiful and lived in. The exterior shots are all set on location. However, there are a lot of instances where CGI hills and mountaintops are composited into the background or to the environment, and you realise why that's done later on. And when you have this real environment and then you have this like green screen looking hill in the background, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and that was kind of distracting, especially when you're watching it when it's released on Netflix. There's a lot of good Netflix films that have this same problem with this like obvious green screen or unpolished CGI. It's minor, but you do notice it.
Sort of a lonesome place out here, Pete, unless you get in the swing of things.
Again, it's probably Benedict Cumberbatch's best performance that he's done to date. From what I've seen of him, his character arc and his story went in directions I wasn't expecting, and that was really cool. He's really committed to this role, and I'm not sure if this is a spoiler, but he hangs dong in this film. You see his Johnson, and it's like, bravo, because that is dedication, and he's having this mud bath as well. Just great scenes that illustrate this idea of his way of life, and he's at peace when he goes and retreats in nature and has these mud baths. At the start you think he's just an arsehole, but it really makes you sympathise with him. You always know what's going on inside the minds of the four prominent characters. They're just so fleshed out, and Jesse Plemmons kind of disappears for the whole second act, but he still has such a presence for the limited time he's on screen. It's just such efficient storytelling. I really enjoyed this film. Again, there's multiple meanings to derive from the story. It is very ambiguous, but you don't really need to know the exact meaning to enjoy it, to get a cathartic experience from watching it, because the characters are just so human. It's just a really good solid film. That's a great utilisation of what cinema was invented for. It's artistic, but it's not like pretentious art house shit. It's emotional, but it's not melodramatic and sappy. And again, as I say this, I don't know anything about sound design or sound editing, but on the more technical side, there's some very naturalistic sound design. Particularly when I noticed it was one of the restaurant scenes at the beginning. It was just a noisy, echoey, crowded room, and it just felt very natural. Like, everyone knows how noisy restaurants are. You can hear bits of everyone's conversation, someone's laughing over there, people are talking over each other, and it's much appreciated when the filmmakers get that right. And also I imagine it takes quite a bit of skill to do as well, and a lot of time. So yeah, well done there, fellas. It's by a director who I haven't heard about before. I'm interested to see what else they've done, or if this is their first film. If you've seen The Sisters Brothers, I love that film. That is just a fucking fantastic film. This is a good companion piece to that. The Western genre is just so rich. watch. So yeah, so far it's probably one of the best films of the year. I think right now I have it at number 2. It's above Dune and Last Night in Soho only because it's more concretely a good film. Because I'm conflicted with Last Night in Soho, and Dune I kind of want to see the big picture first to like really judge it, the full story. This is just like a really well-made standalone solid movie that you should all watch. Great acting, brilliant use of visual language, really nice score and good cinematography, really immersive. Benedict Cumberbatch is really good. Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemmons are also solid. Yeah, that about does it. Eh? It's a good movie. Good movie. Please go and watch it because I reckon you'd enjoy it. Yeah. If you've got a brain, if you're smart. Bye.